Do you ever struggle to play really soft high notes on the clarinet? Maybe in something like this? Well, if you do, I'm going to explain why that's so challenging to do on the clarinet and how to work on it. My name is Josh Gu, and I'm taking my years of experience learning, teaching, and performing, and sharing all of my best clarinet and music tips so you can get more out of your practice, and most importantly, have fun. You can learn more about all of my many resources at quickstartclarinet.com, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell to get notified when I post new videos. First, if you're somebody who's learning to play the clarinet and wanting to improve at the clarinet, I want to make sure that you know about my free members area, where you can get all of my best free handouts and downloads and teaching all organized in one convenient place. If that sounds interesting to you, you can go to quickstartclarinet.com/get started, where you can create your login for the free members area and then get logged in there to see all of the great things in there. There's stuff on rhythm, there's stuff on sound quality, there's stuff on how to practice more effectively, and a ton of clarinet fundamentals as well. So again, if you're somebody who wants to get better, you enjoy my teaching style, then quickstartclarinet.com/get started would be a great place for you to go to access all of those free resources, conveniently organized with my very best stuff all in one spot. Now, when it comes to those soft high notes that can be really kind of scary and intimidating and challenging to do on the clarinet, I think the first question we need to ask ourselves is why? And I think that's actually a really good first question to ask ourselves whenever we're struggling with anything, probably in all of our life, but definitely anything in clarinet and music. The first question is, why is this challenging? Why am I struggling with it? So let's take a look at that when it comes to the soft high notes on the clarinet. So there's a couple things that we need to understand first before we can understand why this is so challenging. First is what actually happens when we're playing high notes, and second is what actually happens when we're playing soft. So we can kind of start breaking it down and start digging into it to really understand that why and why it's a challenge. So starting off with playing high notes. High notes are at a higher frequency, which means the air vibration and resonance in the clarinet and the vibrations of the reed are moving at a higher frequency. And if you're not familiar with physics and frequency and amplitude and those kinds of terms, frequency is the number of vibrations per second. Another way to think about that is the number of times the reed is sort of slapping the mouthpiece per second. So as we play higher and higher notes, that frequency increases as the frequency of the pitch increases. Even the lowest notes on the clarinet are still faster than I can clap my hands, but you can imagine the low notes kind of have a little bit slower vibration, and then the high notes are a little bit faster vibration. Now, the reason why that this is so important is in order to get those high frequencies of vibration, we need really, really high energy to the air and high energy to the resonance. In fact, that's what the register key is for to some extent. When we're playing like a low C, for example, without the register key, the air is nice and stable and you get those frequency of vibrations you need for that C. When you hit the register key, a little air starts leaking out of there, and that actually creates a bunch of turbulence in the clarinet, and that turbulence makes the air resonance speed up in frequency, and that kind of feeds back to the reed, and then the reed also speeds up in frequency, and that's how you get the higher pitches to come out. Now, you may have experienced this where if you're going to play a low C and then press the register key, you get something like this, where the higher G is like trying to come out but isn't really coming out, and you're getting sort of an undertone or a grunt to it. And that means that there's not enough energy to the air in general to have enough turbulence in it and enough frequency to it to actually get up to the higher note. So that's how high notes work, is we need really good energy to the air to keep the vibration frequencies really, really high for where they need to be for those pitches. Now, the other side of things when it comes to volume and playing loud versus playing soft has to do with the amplitude of the reed vibrations. And the amplitude is how far away from the mouthpiece the reed is vibrating. So if you think about, we have the mouthpiece, we have the reed, frequency is the speed, amplitude is kind of the distance of it. And if you think about it, it makes sense because the further away the reed is springing from the mouthpiece before it hits it, the harder that sort of reed slap is going to be, and that's what makes the louder sound, is we have more force in the air and the resonance as we get more amplitude to the vibrations. And if we want to play loud high notes, it's not too hard because we just put a lot of air in and put a lot of energy in, and we get both a large amplitude and a large frequency to the vibrations, and we get loud high notes. There's also kind of an interesting thing in physics where high notes just kind of project better than low notes, so they also automatically come out sounding louder. So we kind of have a sort of triple whammy that makes it really easy to play those high notes loud. And when we're doing sort of the start of the Weber concertino that I demonstrated in the introduction to this video, it's very easy to get something like where it really wants to pop out rather than being that sort of very gentle from niente start that we're looking for. So when we're trying to get that soft start that we actually want, we have some kind of laws of physics to fight. The note naturally will project more than a lower note because it's higher. We need the energy to get the note to come out and not be an undertone, but we need it to not be so energetic that it's increasing the amplitude of the sound and the vibrations and actually making it a louder volume. So how do we actually do that? And the reason why I always like to start with why is the problem there in the first place is because once you know why, how to solve it starts to become more clear. So we have the clear problem that we need energy for the frequency, but too much energy will increase the amplitude. So we can start to sort of hone in on what we might be able to do to actually get those notes to play softly. And the key, I think, is to keep the air very, very energetic and keep high energy in the air without actually blowing too much air or blowing too hard that we're going to open up that amplitude and increase the volume. So how do we do that? Maybe we need to look at what actually is energy to the air. So there's two kinds of energy to the air, and there's probably actually a few more kinds, but two that are worth dealing with here. One is the volume of the air. If you think about if you throw a bigger ball at something, if it's heavier, if it's bigger, it's going to have more force and more energy when it hits whatever it's hitting. So that's kind of related to the volume of air. And what I mean by volume of air is sort of how wide the airstream is, how many actual air molecules are moving into the reed. So the more volume of air, the bigger we're blowing, the harder we're blowing, the more energy there will be. However, volume pretty much directly translates to also volume of sound. So volume, the amount of air, translates to volume, the amount of sound, which I think makes good sense. So we can't achieve high energy through high volume of air because that will also give us high volume of sound. But there's also another form of energy. If you think about something like a bullet, it's very low volume, very small and lightweight, but it impacts a lot of energy because it's moving extremely quickly. And that's the key to playing soft high notes, is that you need to move the air very, very quickly, but keep it very narrow. This is, again, a little bit of one of these things in playing where it's easy as we think about fast air to also start blowing a wider stream and a bigger stream of air where, again, we're going to get louder sounds. So thinking about fast but also very narrow air can be a great thing to do. And you can even practice that away from the clarinet. So what we're aiming for when it comes to the air is as if we're blowing through a very, very small, narrow straw, but as fast as we can, something like this. And you can practice that without the clarinet to actually hear what your air is doing. Probably most of you, when you think like, okay, I'm just going to blow as if I'm playing, you'll get something like this. and it's a very kind of low pressure sound. It's kind of a wide, like almost as if you're sighing. Maybe there's a little whistle in it, which is great, but see how much you can dial that in with really fast speeds through a really narrow passage. You'll notice as a side effect of this too, that you're actually able to blow for a lot longer, and that's a great indication that you're blowing fast, but at a low volume and a low amount of air going out, because that same amount of air that you took into your lungs is actually lasting you longer because you're moving it through a very narrow channel and not actually bombarding the reed with that many air molecules, but the air molecules are moving fast enough that it can still vibrate at that high frequency. So that's why those soft high notes are so challenging, and that's how to sort of blow differently and approach them differently so that you can get them to come out really well. But I want to leave you with a few other ideas and a few exercises to actually do that. Exercise number 1 is sort of blowing through that small straw idea and getting that focus, that good narrow fast airstream away from the clarinet, and then try doing it on the clarinet. Exercise number 2 is to actually start with a good loud sound and a really comfortable, easy sound on those high notes, and then diminuendo from there. The laws of momentum and inertia mean that if you get the reed going at that frequency with the good loud start to it, then it'll have that inertia, and then you can back off and you can really find that line and find what it feels like to keep the reed vibrations going, but at a softer volume. And then the third exercise, or the third thing that I want you to think about, is a little bit different from the airstream stuff, but also very important, and that's to make sure that your embouchure isn't getting in the way. You can have that nice, narrow, fast airstream dialed in perfectly and still not be able to play those notes at all if the embouchure's in the right spot. Or, sorry, if the embouchure's in the wrong spot. And you'll hear this happening because the note will really want to sort of pop out, and you'll get this kind of effect, where it's a really sudden kind of fa, and kind of all of a sudden loud. And the reason for that is because you're clamping down with the embouchure, you're trying to control it, you're trying to get that narrow stream of air, but that attempt at the narrow stream of air is carrying over into a tight, narrow embouchure, which is actually pinching off the reed vibrations. So you'll start blowing and nothing's gonna come out, and then you're like, oh, why isn't it coming out? Okay, I need to kind of let the note out a little bit, and you'll kind of intuitively raise the blowing pressure and relax the embouchure a little bit, and that combination causes it to pop out. So the exercise to do for that is to try playing that note with as little embouchure pressure as possible. And I actually like to do it where I start blowing and then gradually increase the embouchure pressure from nothing. So again, the note's not going to come out, and it won't be a good start to the note necessarily, but you'll learn where that is. So the way that would look is I'm thinking about the fast, narrow, good air, but with no embouchure pressure, and then gradually increasing it. And I'll actually show you with my hand sort of what my embouchure pressure is doing. So it's... And you can see I didn't clamp down hardly at all. Honestly, using the hand thing, where I was starting before was probably more like this, rather than... And by doing it that way, you can really find that fine line for how little embouchure pressure you need to get the note to come out. So I hope that gives you some food for thought and some things to work on when it comes to playing those higher notes. Remember, it's all about that counterbalance of very fast air with a very narrow airstream, so there's good energy to it, but it's not increasing the amplitude of the reed vibrations. And you're not getting in the way with the embouchure so that the reed is actually able to vibrate when you go for it. So let me know in the comments if you have any questions about this. Let me know if you give these exercises a try and if they help for you. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I look forward to seeing you in another one. And last but not least, a huge heartfelt thank you to the Dennersons. This is like the QuickStart Clarinet family who supports the channel and helps to make everything that I do possible. If you would like to support the channel and get some awesome rewards in return where we can work one-on-one over video and you can have my full support moving forward on your clarinet journey, then go to quickstartclarinet.com/supporter.